तेरा चरण से विभक्त सनेवा, तेरा चरण से विभक्त सनेवा, तेरा चरण से विभक्त सनेवा, जन्म जन्म होए अभिलाष, जन्म जन्म होए अभिलाष। साई गोसाई जबे ब्रज कोलवा, ये साई गोसाई जबे ब्रज कोलवा, राधा कृष्ण नित्य लीला करेला प्रकाश, राधा कृष्ण नित्य लीला करेला प्रकाश। आनंद बोलो हरे भज वृंदावन, बोलो हरे भज वृंदावन। आनंद बोलो हरे भज वृंदावन, आ हरे भज वृंदावन। श्री गुरु वैष्णव पदे मजाए अमार, श्री गुरु वैष्णव पदे मजाए अमार, श्री गुरु वैष्णव पद पद्म कोरिया, श्री गुरु वैष्णव पद पद्म कोरिया। नाम संकीर्तन कहे नरोत्तम दास, श्री गुरु वैष्णव पद पद्म कोरिया। कीर्तन कहे नरोत्तम दास, नाम संकीर्तन कहे नरोत्तम दास। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, राम राम हरे हरे। जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव, जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शना। गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय, जय सच्चिदंतन गौर हरे। गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय, गौरानिताय जय गौरानिता प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन महायज्ञ की हरे कृष्णा। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतः सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। So today we're reading from second canto, second chapter, verse number 30. प्रभूतसूक्ष्मेन्द्रियसन्निकर्षम् मनोमयं देवमयं विकार्यम् संसाद्य गत्या सहते न याति विज्ञानतत्त्वं गुणसन्निरोधम्। Once repeat. प्रभूतसूक्ष्मेन्द्रियसन्निकर्षम् कार्यम् सबूतसूक्ष्मेन्द्रियसन्निकर्षम् विकारम् जगत्या सहते न याति तत्त्वं गुणसन्निरोधम्। What word? Saha, he the devotee. Bhuta, the gross. Sukshma, and the subtle. Indriya, senses. Sannikarsham, the point of neutralization. Manamayam, the mental plane. Devamayam, in the mode of goodness. Vikaryam, egoism. Samsadhya, surpassing. Gatya, by the progress. Saha, along with. Tena, them. Yati, goes. Vijnana, perfect knowledge. Tattvam, truth. Guna, the material modes. Sannirodham, completely suspended. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. The devotee, thus surpassing the gross and the subtle forms of coverings, enters the plane of egoism. And in that status, he merges the material modes of nature, ignorance and passion, into this point of neutralization and thus reaches egoism in goodness. After this, all egoism is merged into the Mahat Tattva and he comes to the point of pure self realization. So, purport we'll discuss part by part. So, before that, we'll have prayers. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणि प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone to today's morning Bhagavatam class. We're discussing from Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse number 30, and here we're in the middle of discussion of how a yogi makes his way back home, back to Godhead. So before I can continue, I would like to seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas present here, and so that I can speak that which is in service to all of you, glorification of Krishna and purification of my own heart. Does anyone know how to fix this on that? But I can refer my notes. Is there a way to fix this so that it's always displayed? Do you know how to do it in 10 seconds? Okay, no, no. Yogesh too, you can come. I don't know. Okay. So here in this chapter, Shukadev Goswami is describing the yogic way of going back to Godhead or to the spiritual world. So we see that the yogis or the path described for yogis, even Krishna brings about some details in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And here it is even in more detail. So if we see the entire material creation, especially in the this Brahmanda, one universe. So when the Supreme Lord, allows all these garbha or the eggs, the Brahmanda eggs to be generated, then he himself enters the creation as the super soul, Garbha Udakashai Vishnu. Now he orchestrates the creation in such a beautiful way. You see that first the subtle elements are created, and from the subtle comes the gross. Correct? That's the way creation proceeds. And in order to go back home, back to Godhead, the yogic path is winding up the gross into the subtle, into the most subtle, and finally into the supreme subtle, that is spiritual. So here in this verse, it is described that a yogi, he controls his senses, the gross senses first, and then he merges the senses into the mode of ignorance. Okay, and he merges the subtle senses into the mode of passion, and then the ultimately comes to the level of the mind, and mind is merged into the mode of goodness. Okay, so ultimately he reaches a point of ego, because false ego is the most subtle of material elements. It won't happen in 5-10 seconds. Okay, so false ego is the most subtle of all the material elements, and ultimately he must even merge that into the Mahat Tattva, and then he's rid of the ego itself, and only then is he eligible to go out of the universe into the spiritual world. Okay. So in this way, the yogic path is described. But even Prabhupada explains in the purport we're going to read now that this yogic path is not so important because it's not very practical in this day and age. Then why is it there in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Srimad Bhagavatam is a Krishna literature meant especially for the age of Kali Yuga. But then why do we have it? Description of the yogic process in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Because when Shukadev Goswami was narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit, many who were present in the audience, plus the forefathers of Parikshit Maharaj themselves, like even if you see Pandavas retire timely, the chapter, how they all leave the body through yogic process. So that time, everyone was being trained in this way of going back to spiritual world. So that time it was very relevant. But in this day and age, the only thing that is relevant is the process introduced by Lord Chaitanya, and that is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Simply by chanting the holy names of Krishna, we are actually um, circumventing the entire yogic process that is required to go back home, back to Godhead. So just see, we are here chanting for 2 hours, or so many rounds, 16 rounds or whatever rounds, and through chanting we are achieving the same result as the yogi who has to do dhyana and meditation for so many years and so painstakingly and achieve the same result. Now in the purport also we'll see, hopefully we will see that Prabhupada explains that the end result is the same. Whether you follow the process by Lord Chaitanya or you follow the entire yogic process, which is not little, very complicated. It's complicated to even understand theoretically. What to speak of practically? How do you even merge the senses into the modes? Correct. Now, sometimes we don't even know what modes we are in. So we don't even understand such things. What to speak of merging the senses, merging the modes into the false ego is so abstract. It is like completely impractical. So for us, by the benediction of Srila Prabhupada, we have got this process by which simply chanting the holy names of Krishna, we are actually achieving a result even better than the yogic process. Though Prabhupada explains that the end result is the same, that is only to say that bhakti is not offering you anything less. But beyond that, actually, bhakti gives you your notes. Beyond that, bhakti actually gives us direct entrance into the topmost Vaikuntha planet, that is Goloka Vrindavan, and to experience the fruit of love of Godhead. Who is done? I would like to have my notes. Okay. Uh, Only thing I cannot project from here. It's fine. Okay. 2.2.30. Purport we'll read. Second, yeah, you can project from that. For Zoom, I have to project from here. It's already done. For Zoom, is it? Okay. So I don't have to share. So complicated. See, for us, this is only so complicated. What to speak of yogic process? Okay, fine. Okay, we're reading the purport. Pure self-realization, as we have several times discussed, is a pure consciousness of admitting oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Lord. Thus, one is reinstated in his original position of transcendental loving service to the Lord. As will be clearly explained in the following verse. Yeah. This stage of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord without any hopes of emolument. Emolument means any payment from the Lord or any other way can be attained when the material senses are purified and the original pure state of the senses is revived. It is suggested herein that the process of purifying the senses is by the yogic way, namely, the gross senses are merged into the mode of ignorance, subtle senses into the mode of passion. The mind belongs to the mode of goodness and therefore is called Devamaya or godly. Perfect purification of the mind is made possible when one is fixed in the conviction of being the eternal servant of the Lord. Therefore, simple attainment of goodness is also a material mode. One has to surpass the stage of material goodness and reach the point of purified goodness of Vasudeva Sattva. This Vasudeva Sattva helps one to enter into the kingdom of God. We'll discuss this. So, here Prabhupada explains what is self-realization. So if you were to hear what is self-realization 5,000 years back, you would be getting such a complicated answer because one of the processes then was the yogic process of attaining self-realization. How you're not the body, but that's not sufficient. But you have to understand the different layers of covering over the soul, merge them into the modes and so many things after that. But here, thanks to Prabhupada, what is self-realization? So succinctly, Prabhupada is given is the pure consciousness of admitting oneself to be the eternal servant of the Lord. Because if we can become convinced in this one fact, then the mind is perfectly purified. Prabhupada explains, perfect purification of the mind is made possible when one is fixed in the conviction of being the eternal servant of the Lord. So many paths describe that self-realization means I'm spirit. That is self. You have realized yourself that you are spirit. Aham Brahmasmi. But Aham Brahmasmi is an incomplete and unsatisfying definition of self-realization. Why incomplete? Because you understand your spirit soul, you understand something beyond the body, but you don't understand in on that platform what do you do. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nasho Chatina Kankshati. Then Shubhuteshu Madbhaktim. So the point is, after attaining the point of neutralization, that means neutralization of all the material elements, negative to zero, but that is not sufficient. They are still unstable because unless and until you hatch on or hook on to the positive aspect of realization, that is, I'm servant of Krishna, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishna Nityadas. Unless and until that realization is attained, the spirit soul it goes on to take up other weeds of false ego, which means he still he needs an identity. The spirit soul cannot be satisfied in the identity that I'm just Brahman, I'm just light. That is not sufficient. He needs a proper identity, and when the positive actual identity is not hatched onto, not understood, then what happens? He comes back to material identity. Otherwise, he may even go on to think that I am only Brahman, I am God. I am Brahman means I am God, I am provider, I am the enjoyer. So, like that, the spirit soul, if not given the right understanding of self realization, he goes on to take up wrong understandings of self realization. That's why Aham Brahmasmi is incomplete. And why is it unsatisfying? Because the nature of the spirit soul is to serve, and to that degree and to the degree we actually harmonize our activities and consciousness with our original identity, only to that degree we can feel satisfaction. Savai pungsam paro dharmo yatho bhaktir adhokshaje ahai tuki apratihata yayatmasu prasidati. So here it says that only unalloyed, uninterrupted service to Krishna can provide deep satisfaction to the spirit soul. Why is that? Because as a eternal dharma. Okay, so liberation or self-realization is what? Being reinstated to our original positive understanding of identity, that is servant of Krishna. Unless and until that is achieved, it's all incomplete below that. Muktir hitvanyatha rupam swarupena vyavastiti. You have to be established in swarupa, not just aham brahmasmi. But how does it begin? How does the entire process of self-realization begin? It begins with pratyahara. So though the yogic process per se, the details cannot be imitated because of the disqualifications we have been awarded by the age of Kali, but nevertheless, there are so many lessons we can learn from the yogic process. One, pratyahara is very important. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Pratyahara means withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Correct? So unless until a yogi, a transcendentalist learns to withdraw the senses from the sense objects, there is no question of further progress, even for a bhakti yogi. Even for a bhakti yogi, unless until there is sense control and mind control, there is no question of further progress. Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Abharta Chetasam. To the degree we allow the senses to contact with the sense objects in the false mood of enjoyership, to that degree we are pulling ourselves and our consciousness down onto the material realm. So withdrawing and engaging. Krishna says 2.60 or 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asitamatparaha vashehi yasya indriyani. Vasha means to control. How you control? Vashehi yasya indriyani. How? By not only withdrawing from the sense object but engaging it rightly in Krishna seva. Jihve kirtaye keshavam muraripum cheto bhajashridaram. पाणिद्वन्द्वसमर्चयच्युतकथः श्रोतद्वयत्वं शृणु कृष्णालोकया लोचनद्वयं हरेर्गच्छाङ्घ्रि उद्मालयम् जिग्रघ्राणमुकुन्दपादतुलसीं मूर्ध्नं नामदोक्षजम्. Here King Kulshekar Alvar is describing how every sense should be engaged in Krishna Seva. Can anyone think of any sense that you have, sense organ I mean, that you have which cannot be engaged in Krishna Seva? Anyone knows? What is that verse? How Sanat Kumaras became devotees? How did it start? तस्यारविन्दनयनस्य पदारविन्दं किञ्जल्कमिश्र तुलसी मकरन्दवायु. So even the lotus or the tulsi leaf, the flowers offered to Krishna, the garland which is given to you from Krishna, you can use a sense organ. So every sense organ can be used in Krishna Seva. But how many of you can say that though all the sense organs are engageable, so to speak, in Krishna Seva, we are not doing that to our best? Yes, correct? Yeah. So unless until we can achieve this pratyahara, our further progress is kind of halted. Why? Because unless until there is withdrawal of the gross sense, we cannot work on the subtle senses or like the subtle body. So if our gross body is very much active in enjoying the material, as I mean, the material pleasures of this world, actually it is through the subtle body which is active through the gross body. Understood? No. So if the gross sense is active in this world, then the subtle body is very very active. If the gross senses are not active, they are withdrawn from sense objects, then you have some space to work on the subtle body. So if gross body, subtle body is not worked upon, where is the question of liberation? But thankfully, thanks to Krishna, thanks to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, thanks to the Acharyas, because it's a wonderful process, Kevala Ananda Kanda, where we derive greater taste just by engaging our senses. In so even the mundane activities of this world with a purified consciousness, like Arjuna was fighting for pleasure of Krishna, you are working for pleasure of Krishna. Also the ordinary activities of eating, sleeping, mating, defending with a purified consciousness, we take prasadam, you take rest so that you can chant, attentively, etc. So these, and be attentive in Bhagavatam class. So in this way what happens is, through the normal so-called normal activities with a better consciousness, you can easily transcend the material activities altogether. That is the beauty of the bhakti process. But nevertheless, pratyahara and then dharana. Dharana means to work on the subtle body. So all this is important even for a bhakti yogi. Okay, so how do we proceed? We proceed from detachment from gross matter, then detachment from subtle matter, and then detachment from the subtle most element of matter, that is ego, and then we can actually go. So we all know that Kanakadas's story. How can you go? He says that I can go if I may go. Though it's a very one sutra kind of a statement, actually it's not so simple. Because unless the I is what? Ego. Ego is what? Subtlemost element of matter. So how to remove that? It's through, beginning from engagement of the gross senses in the right way, then working and purifying the subtle senses means the subtle body, and then working on the false ego. But here Prabhupada explains when the mind becomes fixed on the conviction that I am servant of Krishna, things become much easier. Purification of mind becomes much easier, right? So, if we can, that's why when chanting, if we see chanting, many a times it becomes difficult for us because the mind is not fixed on this conviction that I am the servant of Krishna. Rather, it keeps hovering about so many identities that ultimately, and we'll see the negative impact of that. Ultimately, at the end of our chanting, we're just happy that it got over. And we give a benefit of doubt to ourselves that yes, I chanted 16 rounds. But actually speaking, we have not chanted 16 rounds because when the mind is hovering about various identities in this world, what we are doing is Nam Akshar only. It's mostly Aprad Nam, maybe some glimpse of not Shuddhanam, of course, Namabhas, right? But mostly it's Apradnam. And at Apradnam, what happens is in the heart, the material desires are increasing subtly but steadily. And we'll discuss that as the purport goes into that. So, here Prabhupada explains basically in the first paragraph that self-realization means to attain the pure consciousness of being the servant of Krishna, and for that gross wind up followed by subtle wind up followed by merging the false ego. But for us, engaging our gross senses, then engaging our mind. If you see in Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna ask you to offer? Mind, body, mind, intelligence or ego? Mind. Intelligence also, mai buddhi niveshaya, like that, no? But most commonly he asks mind, because mind is element in the mode of goodness. Okay. Okay, so we'll go to the, oh, this is not going to work, but online it is being projected. No, online is there. Okay. Yeah, I'll share. Okay. We may also remember in this connection that the process of gradual emancipation by the devotees in the manner mentioned above, although authoritative, is not viable in the present age because of people's being primarily unaware of the yoga practice. We don't have that training. The so called yoga practice by the professional protagonists may be physiologically beneficial, but such small successes cannot help one in the attainment of spiritual emancipation as mentioned herein. 5,000 years ago, when the social status of human society was in perfect Vedic order, the yoga process mentioned herein was a common affair for everyone because everyone, and especially the Brahmana and Kshatriya, was trained in the transcendental art under the care of the spiritual master far away from home in the status of brahmacharya. Modern man, however, is incompetent to understand it perfectly. That's what we have discussed. So why is there in the Bhagavatam? Because that time there was a lot of training, and so many people were attending the samvad between, or the discussion between Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, that many actually were so aware of this process that they actually uh, discussing this actually helped them. But for us, it is not required. Next, Lord Sri Chaitanya therefore made it easier for the prospective devotee of the present age in the following specific manner. Ultimately, there is no difference in the result. Ultimately, there's no difference in the result. Whether you adopt the complicated yogic process or you take up the simple process of bhakti, not so simple for our complicated false ego, but in and of itself, bhakti is a very simple process. The result is non-different. The first and foremost point is that one must understand the prime importance of bhakti yoga. The living beings in different species of life are undergoing different terms of engagement according to their fruitive actions and reactions. But in the execution of different activities, one who secures some resources in Bhakti Yoga can understand the importance of service to the Lord through the causeless mercy of the Lord, as well as that of the spiritual master. I know without seeing, only hearing is little austere, but we should be very attentive, and later you will understand why you should be attentive also. A sincere soul is helped by the Lord through meeting a bona fide spiritual master, the representative of the Lord. By the instruction of such a spiritual master, one gets the seed of Bhakti Yoga. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends that the devotee sow the seed of Bhakti Yoga in his heart and nurture it by the watering of hearing and chanting of the holy name and fame, etc. of the Lord. The simple process of offenselessly chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord will promote one very soon to the stage of emancipation. There are three stages in chanting of the holy name of the Lord. The first stage is offensive chanting of the holy name. Second is a reflective stage of chanting the holy name. Third is the offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Here, offenseless, Shuddhanam. But the first stage is the offensive, yeah, okay. The third stage is offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord. In the second stage only, the stage of reflection between the offensive and offenseless stages, one automatically attains the stage of emancipation. And in the offenseless stage, one actually enters into the kingdom of God. Although physically he may apparently be within the material world, to attain the offenseless stage, one must be on guard in the following manner. So here, Prabhupada explains that how we can go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah. So by Namaprad, Namabhas, or Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam. Here, offenseless means the third stage, Shuddhanam. Reflective is Namabhas in this purport. Yeah, I'll discuss this and the next one together. When we speak of hearing and chanting, it means that not only one should chant and hear the holy name of the Lord as Rama or Krishna, or systematically as the 16 names of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But one should also read and hear the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of devotees. This primary practice of Bhakti Yoga will cause the seed already sowed in the heart to sprout. And by a regular watering process, as mentioned above, the Bhakti Yoga creeper will begin to grow. By systematic nurturing, the creeper will grow to such an extent that it will penetrate the coverings of the universe, as we have heard in the previous verses, reach the effulgent sky, the Brahmajyoti, and go further and further and reach the spiritual sky where there are innumerable spiritual planets called the Vaikuntha Lokas. Above all of them is the Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan, wherein the growing creeper enters and takes repose at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, the original person of Godhead. When one reaches the lotus feet of Krishna at Golok Vrindavan, the watering process of hearing and reading as also chanting of the holy name in the pure devotional stage fructifies, and that fruit grown there in the form of love of God are tangibly tasted by the devotee even though he is here in the material world. The ripe fruits of love of God are relished only by the devotees constantly engaged in the watering process described above. But the working devotee, not like working devotees, working devotees like sadhaka. The working devotee must always be mindful so that the creeper which has so grown will not be cut off. Therefore, he should be mindful of the following considerations. Offense by one of the feet of a pure devotee may be likened to the mad elephant who devastates a very good garden. If it enters, one must be very careful to guard himself against such offenses at the feet of pure devotees, just as one protects a creeper by all around fencing. It so happens that by watering process, some weeds are also grown, and unless such weeds are uprooted, the nurturing of the main creeper may be hampered. Actually, these weeds are material enjoyment, merging the self in the absolute truth, absolute without separate individuality, and many other desires in the field of religion, economic development, means dharmartha kama moksha. There are many other weeds like disobedience to the tenets of revered scriptures, unnecessary engagements, killing animals, hankering after material gain, prestige, and adoration. If sufficient care is not taken, then the watering process may only help to breed the weeds, stunting the healthy growth of the main creeper, resulting in no fructification of the ultimate requirement, that is, love of God. The devotee must therefore be very careful to uproot the different weeds in the very beginning. Only then will the healthy growth of the main creeper not be stunted. By doing so, the devotee is able to relish the fruit of love of God and thus live practically with Lord Krishna even in this life and be able to see the Lord in every step. The highest perfection of life is to enjoy life constantly in the association of the Lord, and one who can relish this does not aspire after any temporary enjoyment of the material world by other media. Srila Prabhupada ki. Now we'll start. Okay. So one good thing when electricity goes is the clock is also off. Okay, but don't worry. Such a big purport, but very strong purport. So here, Prabhupada is explaining how can a devotee in the age of Kali Yuga go back home, back to Godhead. And to explain that to us, here Prabhupada takes the analogy that is given by Lord Chaitanya to Srila Rupa Goswami in the Rupa Shiksha of Chaitanya Chaitamrit. And he gives the analogy of the Bhakti Kripa, Bhakti Lata. ब्रह्मांड कौन ब्रह्मांड भ्रमिते कौन भाग्यवान जीव गुरु कृष्ण प्रसादे पाए भक्ति लता बीज. The living entity, after enters a material cosmos away from Krishna, having said no to Krishna, a frank no to serving Krishna, to loving him, and being having anything to do with Krishna, enters the material world in order to fulfill his innumerable material desires to find happiness or so-called happiness. But once the jiva comes to this material world, he takes up different yonis. Why? Only in a futile attempt to try to be happy under the influence of different modes. But what happens is that jiva, if he becomes bhagyavan, he gets the beach of devotional service. And that is why one who receives the seed of devotional service has to protect it very carefully, very cautiously, as if it's the very precious and rare jewel. Of course, it's more valuable than that, but for our mundane consciousness, sometimes jewel is the best example to highlight value. So, the jiva who receives the seed of bhakti in his heart, he has to cultivate that seed so that it can grow and it can ultimately reach the Goloka Vrindavan planet to bear the fruit of love of God. Now, if you see the yogic process which is described here in this chapter of second canto, and if you see the bhakti process, it's almost same in the sense that here in the first case, the yogi he actually has to make endeavor to merge so many elements together and transcend them and go to the spiritual world. But on the other side, the bhakti yogi, what happens? In his heart, he's sowing the beej, and the beej grows into a lata, a creeper, and that grows, penetrates the material coverings, so many subtle coverings, and then enters the, cross the Viraja Nadi, enters the spiritual cosmos, spiritual sky, and then enters into the place where so many innumerable Vaikuntha planets are there, and then enters in the topmost planet of Krishna Loka. There it bears a fruit at the lotus feet, being sheltered the lotus feet of Krishna, and then that fruit is being tasted. Where is the bhakti yogi in the entire process? Where is he? Is he in the spiritual world? Then in the material world. So being here, you're actually making your way through so many coverings of the universe and entering into the spiritual kingdom. So that is the beauty of bhakti. So if you see this process of cultivating the creeper, which we'll discuss to some extent, the soil or the ground in which the seed is being sown, how does it become fertile? What qualities will make it fertile? Hmm? Water? No, water doesn't make soil fertile. Water is different thing. 5, 4, 3, 2. Following regulative principles. Okay. Not quite. Reading scriptures. No. Hmm? No. No. This is you don't need artificial fertilizers. No. It's nice to know that there's something that we don't know about a commonly used or spoken about topic. Correct, no? Otherwise, there won't be any interest because we have heard these topics hundreds of times. But yes. Huh? Ajnata Sukriti, no. Okay. Gratitude. So only in the soil of gratitude and humility and tolerance can the Bhakti Lata Beej, which is being sown, sprout. So that's the first basic, right? So some appreciation, some gratitude when we have, it actually helps the seed to sprout. And then the Bhakti Lata emerges, right? Now the Bhakti Lata, of course, now when we talk about the ground and the field and the creeper, where is this actually happening? Which geographical place? In our heart. Okay, so the soil of the heart can become fertile with qualities of gratitude and humility. To that degree, the Bhaktilata will sprout and the creeper emerges. And as the creeper emerges, there's a reason why the Bhakti is compared to a creeper, not a sapling and a plant and a bush or a tree. Why? Because, yes, tender, okay, it requires support. So a creeper, like if you can see this orange wire. So a creeper is like this. It requires a stand to grow. Otherwise, it cannot grow. It cannot stand on its own. So that's why in many other processes they condemn bhakti. What is this bhakti? You just have to, so much about dependence and blessings and अपने आप कुछ करो, do something on your ability, on your capacity. Yogis, they sit and meditate. The jnanis, they go read scriptures. The karmis, they voraciously engage their senses. Correct? So everyone is doing something in the false pretense, I mean false influence of doership. But nevertheless, everyone is doing something. Bhakti, what are we doing? It simply is depending on Krishna, and that dependence of Krishna helps the bhakti to grow. If you remove the stand of Hari Guru Vaishnava, Bhakti Lata has no support at all. So we have to understand on the Bhakti Marga, dependence is not a weakness. Rather, it gives strength to our bhakti. Whereas every other marg condemns and looks down upon bhakti because of too much dependence and seeking blessings. But this is the vitality, this is the prana of bhakti lata, which means that without the support, bhakti cannot grow. So that's why it's a creeper. And also creepers, if you see, many creepers grow at the same time and then they intertwine and get entangled and all that. So it becomes difficult to see with if you just follow from the root, from the base, from the ground, you follow one, then you see that another one comes and it becomes so confusing. Sometimes the many wires you keep together, it becomes so confusing which wire. That's why different colors will help. Like that. So but Bhakti Lata, the many creepers, they're very, very similar looking and it's very difficult to differentiate. That's another reason why it is compared to a creeper. Now, how do we cultivate this seed? So Bhagavan, Krishna is called Bhagavan, and one who gets Bhagavan is called Bhagyavan because that's the only Bhagya, right? Of course, there are many mundane definitions of Bhagya, but for a devotee, this is the only Bhagyavan. So now we are all Bhagyavan. We have all got that seed. Though it is said at the time of initiation, what do you get from your spiritual master? You already got that. At initiation, what you're getting? Recently, initiation happened. Most of the devotees are chanting from 10 years. They already got it long back. So it is the Bhaktilata Beej. Okay. So the Beej is given at the time of initiation. So this I've heard from one lecture. So don't ask more questions on it. So now to cultivate this Bhaktilata Beej, what is required? nourishment. You need to give some nutrition to the Bhakti Lata Bij, and that is through Shravana and Kirtana. So, through the process of hearing and chanting, what happens is the Bhakti Lata grows. That's the nourishment, that's the water, that's the food for the Bhakti Lata. So, if you want the Bhakti Lata to grow, then you have to supply sufficient water and water through Shravan and Kirtan. That's why Rajvijay Prabhu's class, he was saying, no, Sanchintayed Bhagavatam Bhagavatas Charanarvindam Vajrankushadvaja Saroruhalanchanadhyam. Right? Sanchintayed means constantly. Prabhupada also uses the word constantly. We have to water how? Constantly. Right? So that kind of Shravana and Kirtana. But not only that, the watering process first of all has to be pure. What does it mean by pure? The Shravan Kirtan source has to be pure. From a self-realized soul is the best. Right? Or sincere devotees following the words, imbibing the Vani of great souls, that is also equally good. Okay, so one is pure. Second one is constantly or continuously it should be done. Then only the Bhaktilata will get. Or you give 2 drops in the morning and then go for 1 week and come back. Then it becomes very difficult. There won't be any nourishment, right? And understand the nature of our heart is what? Samsara dava anala. There is blazing fire of material desires. So, in a heart, in a geographical place of our heart, on the field you're growing a Bhakti Lata, there's a blazing fire. How much water you should give to the Bhakti Lata? Immense amount of fire. Say immense amount of water. Otherwise, the fire will scorch the tender creeper, and it will actually even increase the demand for that water. So unless and until we are doing that sanchintayet, constant absorption in Shravan and Kirtan, then actually it's not going to get fully nourished. And you will see that to the degree you are absorbed in chanting and hearing, to that degree you will actually feel your Bhaktilata is growing. What are symptoms of Bhaktilata is growing or not? Yes, very good. Yeah. One is Bhakti itself. Then second, huh? Vaishnav Seva. Okay. So that is all part of Bhakti. Then Virakti. Very, very good. Yes. Virakti. Then Paraishanubhava. Bhakti, Paraishanubhava, and Virakti. Always remember, are you progressing or not? This is the just simple diagnosis, simple analysis. Am I progressing? Is your Bhakti, Virakti, and Paraishanubhava increasing in your life? So that's when the Bhakti Kripa is actually making its way towards the spiritual world. Otherwise, it's not. It is completely halted and stunted at a very early age or stage. Now, the third aspect of watering, the first one was purity of source. Second one is constant supply. Third one is attentiveness. Unless and until the water is provided to the Bhakti Rata with attention, what happens is, like for example, I'm watering. I have a water can in my hand and I'm watering the Bhakti Lata. But if I start thinking, oh, I have this to do, that to do, and then what happens? I just start thinking and moving. Where's the water can going? Away from the Bhakti Lata, and is actually nourishing the so many millions and millions of bija already sown by our wrong association in the material world. And what are those bijas? Of weeds of material enjoyment. So, not that our heart had no seeds before, it has so many seeds of karma, jnana, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami. All these seeds are already there in the heart, and we are through inattention actually nourishing these seeds, and these seeds will give rise to weeds which look very, very, very close in appearance to the main bhakti lata, right? And this is a big danger on the path of spiritual life, because if you're not able to differentiate bhakti lata with the weeds, upashakha, mula shakha and upashakha, if you're not able to differentiate, what happens? You continue knowingly to water the weeds. That's why actually in bhakti we should not get too disheartened many a times, because many times we realize, okay, actually I don't have love of God. Anyone has had this experience? To some extent, you thought you had love of God, but then later you realize actually you have no love for Krishna. Yeah. Yeah, correct. Yeah, is the post PDS syndrome. Like pure devotional service, that syndrome is there now. And then post that, then you come to the humbling realization that you have no love for Krishna. And then sometimes what happens is we go into a mood, go into a stage of dejection. Nothing works. Maybe bhakti doesn't work, etc. Instead of doing so much emotional drama, what you should do, just apply this formula that am I chanting attentively? Because the holy name of Krishna is so potent. Nam namakari bahuda nija sarva shaktish. So parasya shaktir vividhaiva shrutik. The supreme absolute truth has multifold energies, multivarious energies, manifold. So many energies of supreme lord. And those are very, very effective. And one energy is able to do so many things. Only one Maya Shakti is keeping all of us in captivation, correct, in this world. So, so many energies, all are there present in the holy name of Krishna. And that holy name of Krishna, when we chant, can it not purify our heart? It can, because all potent. Krishna is all potent, all knowledgeable, all strong, all everything. So it's all potent, the holy name. But what is happening here is we are not using that all potent holy name as water on the Bhakti Lata. We're using it for so many other things. You will realize also, you will have realized so many times that while chanting, one name suddenly comes into your attention, and then you realize, oh, this is how it what it means to chant attentively. Anyone has had this experience? Yes, very so few, which means so when you're chanting the holy name, if you're chanting attentively, you will have that experience. Yes, this is what is attentive chanting. Otherwise, sometimes you're hearing the holy name, but it somehow just crosses tangentially to your consciousness. You're hearing it. You're conscious of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. You know it's there in the background. So you think that you're hearing, but that's not hearing. Hearing means through attention. That is the only thing in focus. But here, when we chant, what happens is it crosses as a tangent to our consciousness. And then what happens is, why it crosses the tangent? Because our focus is on something else. What is the time? Acha, 8:37. Hari bol. I've just begun. Anyways, 5 minutes. So it is crossing at a tangent. And because of that, what happens is that the all potent holy name of Krishna is nourishing what we have kept in focus. Because all potent it will produce result at any cost at any time, but our focus is what? Bhukti mukti siddhi, and that is being nourished. And because of that, the material desires in the heart keep growing and growing. The weeds are growing and growing and growing, and you will find that gradually the material desires are increasing. The material taste for material enjoyment is increasing. The craving for material sense gratification is increasing. Why? Because the weeds are growing. And because Bhaktilata is also there, what happens is we get confused. Am I materialist or am I devotee? Correct? So how it presents, there's another this one formula to understand what is happening. Another diagnosis that we have to make. Many a times in the garb of bhakti, we are actually growing weeds. Like for example, I'm giving class so that everyone understands I'm a very great devotee, that I'm very learned. I'm reciting shlokas. Why? So that people think I'm very great devotee. Now, why this is happening? What is the objective here? This is nothing but karmi mentality. I want something, fruitive result. But why is it being given a garb of bhakti? Because both are there. The Mula Shaka and Upashaka, both are there. And then becomes confusing to our consciousness what is actually happening. So we actually think that I'm, reciting shlokas for pleasure of Krishna, but deep, if you introspect, you know that you're memorizing the verses only for the pure objective of getting everyone's attention to yourself away from Krishna. It's still envying the Supreme Lord. So just see how closely knit the two creepers can be. And like this, we have millions of creepers. Now maybe we are starting to rethink, is the yogic process better or bhakti process? Which is easier? No, bhakti is only easier. But the whole point is we have to be very careful. For a non-introspective sadhaka, it is very difficult. For an introspective sadhaka, it is easy. That's why mode of goodness is stress. Why? Because in mode of goodness, you can make out the subtleties in the consciousness. Otherwise, very, very difficult to make out. Okay, so I'll start to just, go a little fast because we only started watering. There are so many things. So now in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's explained so what do we do with the weeds? We have to plug them. We have to remove them, correct? But how do you cut them? Can you take scissors and cut them at the level of the ground? Then why? Why you cannot do that? Yeah. So if you simply suppress, what happens is the roots of the weeds, which are empowered by false ego, those roots become even stronger. And then you see that for last 2 to few years in bhakti, you've been only suppressing. And then what happens? One day you just realize that whole ground in your heart is filled with these weeds. Why? The roots become stronger. So that's why to destroy the weeds, actually you should remove the root. And what is a root? False ego. What is opposite of false ego? True ego, which is servant of Krishna. And that is why Sambandha Jnana plays such an important role in bhakti, chanting, Shravana, Kirtan, everything. Without Sambandha Jnana, you are simply going on chanting, you will cultivate weeds, you will increase the number of weeds, and it's only a matter of time before you notice that your whole heart is filled with so many weeds and becomes even more troublesome for the transcendentalist. And there's a simple solution for this. When one is sheltered at the feet of Guru, spiritual master, he tells you what to do, what not to do, how to deal with the weeds, and how to cultivate the Bhakti Lata. So simple. That's why Bhakti Lata. You have dependence on Hari Guru Vaishnava, things become very simple. It is our false ego which makes it more difficult and complicated. To the degree we are feeling that actually Bhakti Yoga is actually difficult because so many weeds and you plug them, then it grow again. Such a mess. To that degree we fail to understand that no I mean sorry to that degree we are actually thinking that dependence, because you know we don't understand that dependence is such an important thing. That's why we think that bhakti yoga is becoming difficult. My point is, to the degree we are contaminated by false ego, ahankar, to that degree we will think that bhakti yoga is very difficult. Why? Because for a person who has humility, he will automatically depend on Hari Guru Vaishnava, and for such a person, Bhakti Yoga is so simple. But when you don't want to depend on Hari Guru Vaishnava and do on your own whims, that's when it becomes difficult. And what is another problem of that is the next stage. What is the next stage? What is the next important thing which is required? If you're growing a plant on a field, it is most likely to be trampled or eaten or uprooted by so many animals, rabbits and goats and sheep and so many things. But the most feared is the mad elephant. What is mad elephant? It comes, it tramples, and it winds its trunk along the bhakti kripa and just uproots the whole with the bija itself. And then God knows when you'll get another bija. Because Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev. In some corner of the world, after so many millions of lifetime, you got one bija. So valuable. Now you allowed a Hathi elephant to come and uproot it and all together from the field of the heart. When will you get it again? That's why the last few points in the purport, Prabhupada explains that one has to be very careful to avoid this mad elephant offense at the lotus feet of pure Vaishnavas. If you go to the purpose, you can read this Rupa Shiksha in Chaitanya Chaitamrit Madhya Leela 19th chapter 151 verse onwards. Some 10 verses are there. Very beautiful purports. There Prabhupada explains not only offense at the lotus feet of pure Vaishnavas, but also failing to follow the four regulative principles is again a Hatimata offense. Right? There's one more thing. Okay. So how do we protect the plant against this attack by various animals? Fencing. What is that fencing? Yes. So Prabhupada explains that fencing means surrounding ourselves by pure Vaishnavas. Pure Vaishnavas, one. Second, fencing also means to be sheltered at the lotus feet of one's spiritual master. Why? Because it is the material outlook which allows elephants and this and that to enter. So what is not fencing? What is the opposite of fencing? It is our material outlook. It is our independent mentality. That is what allows the various animals to enter and trample and destroy the Bhaktilata. So by fencing, we mean following the Vaishnava etiquette, surrounding our cells by pure devotees. Why? Because that doesn't mean that you sit in middle and all the pure devotees around you. Not that. What it means is you're constantly in association of pure Vani, because of which your outlook remains always spiritual, because of which the tendency to offend is not there. Criticism, offense, everything is born out of material outlook. Material outlook is born out of wrong association, independent mentality, and all these things. So, in order to fence the Bhaktilata properly, we should surround ourselves by pure Vani, right? And that is what is fencing. And it also includes the six Vegas, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Udrupastha Vegam, and all these things. And also Atyahara Prayashishta. So all these things are very important. If we don't follow them, it's akin to removing the fence and allowing any damn animal to come and destroy the creeper. So now, if we have fenced the thing properly, now we are watering attentively, and we are making sure the Bhaktilata grows. If we are doing this very carefully, what happens is the Bhaktilata grows into the spiritual world and bears the fruit of love of God, which the devotee himself, being in the material world, can taste. Okay, so here the soil indicated gratitude, humility, tolerance. The seed is Bhaktilata. Watering is Shravan Kirtan, which has to be attentive, continuous, and pure. PC. Fencing, which is Vaishnava etiquette and shelter of Guru and associate devotees. Animals indicate offenses, so we have to fence against them. And we sometimes we tend to fence the devotees out. Then it becomes very big problem. And if you read the purpose of Rup Shiksha, Prabhupada explains, one may think that ISKCON is full of neophyte devotees. Sometimes some devotees think that I'm surrounded by neophyte devotees. What do I do here? Then he'll go for Nirjan Bhajan, and then he falls down, right? Because even if a person is surrounded by so-called neophyte devotees, in out of the whole population on this planet, how many are Vaishnavas? Correct, no? So it is we should feel great gratitude and obligation that I'm in, amidst devotees. This is my great fortune. Let me serve them. So one should not put himself outside the association of devotees. That's why we sang that song. He says that Janama Janama Eya Bilash. What is that? Yeah, that one has to be to stay amidst the association of devotees is the greatest desire of Narottam Das Thakur. So the root of weeds is the misidentification of forgetfulness of one's true identity, nothing but false ego. And creeper is the tender devotional service that is dependent on Hari Guru and Vaishnava's support. So if we can remember this and practice this, then we can actually make steady progress on the path of devotional service. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult because many times the Hathi elephant, it comes and uproots and leaves it. But the plant takes few days to shrivel. Correct, no? Like rice, if you cook in morning, by evening it gets spoiled. Immediately it won't get spoiled. Similarly, you uproot a plant and leave it, it'll remain green for some time. After some time, it becomes shriveled and dried up. Similarly, we have committed some offense. Immediately we may feel no, nothing's happening, but gradually you'll see that material taste increases, spiritual taste decreases, and that is the beginning of fall away from bhakti. And if any one of us is experiencing some kind of dryness, some kind of increase in material taste or increase in material sense gratificatory desires, we must understand that we are not chanting the holy name attentively. Why? Because Krishna's name is all potent, it has to produce result. But where am I watering? What do I want? So we have to give up this false hope in false shelters or false hope in false homes. Right? If we can do this and focus on Krishna alone, what is the last line of Shikshashtakam? Last line. Mat prananataha na paraha. No one else but you, Krishna. Only when we chant with that mentality, offensive chanting can be overcome, and we can put ourselves at offenseless and gradually to Shuddhanam. So long you have so much hope in the false homes of this world, it's very, very difficult because though you chant, you're actually nourishing the so many weeds of the heart. And though there is much to say, let us end everything by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. Any questions? Hi, Bo. Yes. When we are chanting inattentively, how the material desires grow. Yes. Yeah. So to explain that only, we've given the analogy. So how basically our focus is something else. So we think that we are chanting attentively, but actually we are not. Keeping Krishna in the focus. That's why Sambandha Jnana is important. When you chant without Sambandha Jnana, also sometimes we can chant offenselessly. Right? You just repeat. You see the holy name and chant. You just focus on the name. Why the mind should be brought between. All those things we can follow. But what happens many times is the mind is fixed on some thing based on your false identity. Okay, I'm a doctor, so I'm thinking what I should read tomorrow. What that patient's diagnosis was something else, so I should do this reading, or this problem was there. I should solve it this way. So based on our upadhis, we are trying to solve so many so-called problems of this world. And when you sit and chant, you'll not be able to focus on Krishna as only you, but nothing else. Then what happens? You're watering Bhaktilata also little, weeds also little. Bhaktilata little, weeds little. The problem is the weeds is what? It extracts nutrition from the Bhaktilata. Understood? No? So millions of weeds, imagine, then what will happen to the Bhaktilata? It will just shrivel, it will become weak. So when we are inattentively chanting, we are that all potent holy name is nourishing the weeds to grow. Understood? No? Holy name is pure, so why how it can increase impure desires? Okay, good question. So holy name is pure, then how it can increase the impure desires in our heart? One is because it is all potent. Another thing is because you are inattentive. The holy name is pure, you're using that all potent pure holy name very in a very negligent way. If, for example, we all are looking for so many jobs and all that, correct? Na? Job market is low. If we if someone says, okay, there's a job opportunity, but you get up at 5 a.m. and just be on call for 2 hours, will we be with open senses, open ears and open eyes, and be very careful to answer the so-called boss? Correct, now we'll be so attentive. When the Supreme Person of Godhead, Krishna Himself, is coming as the holy name, non-different, and when we show so much, being callous, careless, and so negligent, then Krishna, why will he not increase the material desires? At least instead of doing aparad, you'll go away from bhakti and do some sinful activity that is better. But when you do aparad, then it becomes difficult. Correct? So that's why material desires increase. Not that Krishna is thinking, okay, little inattention, little deviation, I'll give. No, Prabhupada said, okay, that devotee is struggling to chant. Means what? Inattention is there. But his sincerity is that I don't want to be inattentive. He's trying his best. That is also Namabhas. That is also Namabhas. Why? Krishna is a person. Understood? No? But when we are, you understand, no? It's all attitude problem. Our attitude is so negligent and callous towards the holy name. Holy name also, and we want something else only. The whole Why did Krishna create the material world when Krishna himself is so pure and material world is filled with opportunities for sense gratification? Why did he do that? Krishna is pure, material world gives room for fulfilling impure desires. Doesn't make sense. Huh? Yeah. So he's similarly the holy name is fulfilling your desires as you chant the holy name and think of something else. Same way. Understood, no? So that is not to question the purity of Krishna, but our own subtle body. Why he is increasing? Because that's what you want. Then Krishna gives that. Understood, no? Okay. Yes. Okay. In even our subtle body, spiritual body, senses are there also. Like for example, this is called. I mean, Bhakti students will know better. What ear is called? No, this is gross, but the subtle ear is called something else. Shrotra. Shrotra. So like that. So there's gross eye, that is something, and the subtle eye is called chakshu. Correct, na? Yes. Any Bhakti Yoga students? Nobody? Okay. So yeah, basically like that. Even the subtle body has senses. Even they have to be they have to be cleansed. Okay, because sometimes your the mind has, yeah. So sometimes you lose your eyes, but then you have impressions of some dirty images that still keeps coming. Correct, no? In that way, the subtle sense is still active. Or like Ajamila, he saw dirty side. He closed his gross eye, but the subtle eye is still active. Like that. So even that has to be purified. Okay. Yes, Mohan Saifu. Yeah, correct. But your progress in bhakti is not taken away, no? Like for example, you did chanting for few years and then you made offense as a pure devotee. Whatever progress is there as eternal, that's not removed. The bhakti, the beej is removed. Your tendency for devotional service, that is removed. Understood, no? Yeah, but because of your previous bhakti, you always stand a high chance of meeting a spiritual master, like Bilwa Mangal Thakur. He got that Chintamani, who's actually in the previous life a spiritual master, again as spiritual master in a guise of a prostitute. So understood, now. So whatever progress you have made, that never is never lost. Rather, that will help you to come in contact with spiritual master or devotees more so in the future, more frequent, than very rare. But definitely losing the Bhakti Lata Beach is a great misfortune. Navabhas is reflective stage. Prabhupada explains. So reflective means like moon. Moon also shines. Why it shines? Because of sunlight. Correct, na? But it is not equal to sun. So Namabhas is the clearing stage, reflective stage. Mind becomes peaceful. You can, focus on Krishna. But there's no pure love for Krishna. You're not calling out of love for Krishna. But it's a very conducive stage to develop love for Krishna. To go to Shuddhanam. That's why our basic standard of chanting should be Namabhas. That should be our struggle. In Namabhas, you will get liberation, impersonal liberation. Means the sufferings of this world will go. You will feel like peaceful. Like some devotees chant, they're so peacefully chanting, happily chanting. But beyond that, Shuddhanam. Okay. Yes. Just 1 second. If it's almost 9 o'clock, it'll be beyond the code of conduct of Bhagavatam class to continue. Okay. So we'll end here. Questions like personally. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Questions are there. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Samaved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. So thank you everyone for your patient hearing. Who has genuine question? Yeah. Yes. No, one who is chanting Shuddha he has already developed attachment. He is, of course, only point that well, but there's no time too short. And he becomes overwhelmed. But the point is, in Navabhat, the scaling stage, all the Mukti Siddhi, all those people, now they don't make any more noise. They don't make any more noise. They don't make any more noise. You can hear the holy name. But there's no positive, there's some positive attraction, but there's no intense longing and attraction to Krishna. They're not calling out to Krishna. Honestly, that is Shuddha Nam. They're calling Krishna. You can feel Krishna and Nam are not different. You're worshipping the deity of the holy name as it stands. those should be not problem.
So now our people still trying to focus on Krishna. Even though all the Krishna are not Krishna, but still we are
You can have a photo of Krishna and this feeling people like it. But it's not positive attraction, that intense positive attraction.
naturally developed.
No.
And one more thing, like, one more thing.
This one I'm making a sense of it.
Yoga and yogic prophet teach the main the particular meditation. But
Yeah, correct. So Prabhupada explains like that. That is to say that Bhakti Yoga is not going to give you anything less than the yoga. Yoga process is so difficult, and if you actually use it and attain something, is it less than Bhakti or more than Bhakti? So Prabhupada is explaining that do simple process of Bhakti, you won't get anything less. That's why he says that result is not different. So just do the simple process like that. Actually, it's better than yoga process because you'll get now, one of the rasa, the fruit, it has different taste. According to your mood, you'll get the, specific fruit. Last year, possibly that's money. Like that.
we just Prabhupada was trying to convey.
Yeah, this is better. Like that 8.28, if you see, Danesh, you agree with the first favor. Full of that's there, huh? Wisdom, then Ikshepi,